predictions. I think we kind of have an idea of where things are going. Now, we saw, Jukebox is aware of what Kanan has going on, right? Thus far, until just a few episodes ago, we hadn't seen much interaction between Jukebox and Kanan. They've been doing their own thing, but now she's aware of this business that he has going on. Doesn't know like the inner workings of it, but has like a pretty good idea, and that he's hanging around these older hustlers. And we see her go to RAQ's house, sit down and tell RAQ about what Kanan is getting into, and obviously, thus far, RAQ is to some degree left Kanan alone, right? Like, hasn't really like brought down the hammer on him with regards to this street stuff that he has going on. But granted, part of it is that she doesn't really know the details and inner workings of it, right? She's seen some inklings of it, him with like these people with pagers and whatnot on these scooters and stuff, but doesn't really know what's going on. But with Jukebox kind of cluing her in to him hanging out with Ronnie, hanging out with Snap, Crackle Pop, and the rest of them, that Kanan is likely into dealing drugs, right? And so we see in the preview clip that RAQ is now fully aware of what's going on, right? She probably still doesn't know the details, but at the very least knows that has some kind of dealings with Ronnie and is also involved with these other hustlers. And so with that, we see, Kanan and Ronnie sitting down at the table with Snap and Crackle Pop, right? But then we also see RAQ goes to speak to them. Obviously, RAQ's been active in the area for some time, so she would be aware of Ronnie. She's also aware of these two here and goes to confront them to tell them to stay away from Kanan. In addition to that, we see the Asian guy that it's unclear who he's speaking to, but we can assume that it's RAQ, that he's letting her know that there's some competition in the area, which would be, I'm sure, Kanan and Ronnie's courier business, as I believe like Unique's deal was for heroin, and that's what Ronnie and Kanan are pushing as well. And it's this thing of, the reason that they've set up in these Chinese restaurants is to kind of keep things quiet, to avoid any heat or attention from the police. With Kanan and Ronnie being out here with these couriers zipping about on the streets and whatnot, should they start getting knocked by the police, it can then bring more heat and attention for these Chinese restaurants. And so with that, not just that, but it's like you also have to worry about competition for customers as well. Where it's like a little bit too much activity in the area. And as a result of that, we see in the clip Marvin pulling one of the couriers off of a scooter, right? So what I'm assuming is that they probably put two and two together and realized that, maybe not knowing that it's Kanan specifically, but knowing that there's some other operation in the area, and the plot is to disrupt their flow. And so Marvin most likely is sent out to figure out what's going on and to kind of put a stop to this. And so as a result of that, we see him grabbing one of the couriers off of a scooter. We see the packets of drugs and stuff like that. It's unclear if that would be from Kanan's operation or if that would be from RAQ's new operation. I would think probably from Kanan's, because RAQ's, I'm sure, isn't up and running as yet, right? I would assume that it's probably a matter of Marvin pulling this guy off of the scooter, grabbing up what he has to see what he has and then taking it to report to RAQ. Likewise, we see, looks like Jukebox is involved in a fight in the train station. I would assume that's probably between her and whatever Showboat's name is, as I don't really see any reason for her and Aisha to be fighting. Curious to see why they would be fighting. Maybe it's an exchange of words or something like that. Kind of unclear. Yeah, I'm thinking it's more like something with her and the other girls from the group, rather than street stuff, or directly street stuff, But I felt it at the end of the 6th episode, where we saw Kanan sitting at the party with all of these hustlers, and they're going around and all of them are saying like F-Rock and this and that, and he sits there. He doesn't join in, and he's not exactly smiling or laughing or whatever, but he poses for the picture and he agrees to do business with these guys and whatnot. Meanwhile, they're talking bad about his mom. She's not a saint by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, I wouldn't think you would take it so far as to join up with them, and things are going to head to a point where they're going to end up being warring factions, and it's like Kanan's going to have to choose a side, and it's like we see there's still some degree of loyalty between the Thomas siblings, where it's like they might fuss and fight between themselves, but generally speaking, they don't allow outsiders to get in between, right? We saw that last season where, although Marvin was wrong for getting, what's his name, Bassetti's son involved in his dealings, that RAQ still stood by him and went to the mat for him when the Italians were coming. The same thing the first season, where despite RAQ and Marvin falling out, that they came together to get revenge for Lou, and they put all of that aside when Unique was a threat to them. And so here you have it, where going back to really the early second season, if not the end of the first season, there's been tension between RAQ and Lou, but we saw them come together towards the end of last season to deal with Cartier. And then as well as to clean up the whole Italian situation in the first episode of this season. They've still been on the outs, but we see them pull together when needed, right? Like they don't let outsiders get in their mix. But, and we see that here as well, where even with Lou talking to Scrappy's mom, that RAQ doesn't make the move to just automatically kill him. Neither does Marvin. Instead he's sent to clean up his mess. In the clip for the upcoming episode, we see Lou is in an alley shooting a gun at someone. Now with that, I would kind of question, because he also has a bottle of liquor in his hand. Who's he shooting at? When this episode ended, after he dealt with Scrappy's mom, we saw him leaving the house, and as they rolled by, he'd been having hallucinations of Scrappy. Not just Scrappy, but D-Wiz as well. But more Scrappy. And as he drives by, there's like a window. And initially I thought like, oh my God, like, maybe somebody else is in the house or someone's on the street and they see or something like that, where it's this constant thing of them trying to clean up situations and just making them worse. But instead he rolls by, they go around the corner, and in the window we see Scrappy standing there. Or we see Lou hallucinating that Scrappy's standing there. So it's like this thing of his conscience, the drinking, him with these hallucinations, they're all symptoms of a bigger problem, right? That he's having a hard time living with himself. Now, initially, when he killed Scrappy's mom, if you recall, we saw him fire the shot inside the house. The camera switches to outside the house and we see what's a second shot. For a second, I held my breath because I thought maybe he killed himself too. But we see him leave the house. So I'm guessing it's that he shot her like once in the head and then a second time just to be certain. But like his problems aren't over, right? Like he's still hallucinating about Scrappy. He's still drinking, because even in walking up the steps to the house, we see him drinking. Like he's just gotten so sloppy. It's like now with the drinking, but last season he was constantly being late for meetups and things like that, not being where he's supposed to be, taking money and this and that. And it's like now with his drinking, it's like you might want to actually have him completely removed from the business, because he's a liability. He's a danger to himself and to everyone else around him. He's like in self-destruct mode. But at the same time, we then see a clip where it looks like he's showing up at RAQ's house. RAQ's in her, bathrobe. And we see him, he looks like Fallout drunk. And she's helping him into the house. At the same time looking over his shoulder. It's unclear if it's because someone's truly behind him or what the setup is. I'm guessing, there's a good chance that they'll end up having a come to Jesus meeting. I think RAQ tried to start having that conversation last episode and he pretty much shut her down. But it's like, eventually Lou is going to have to unburden himself to someone. And RAQ is probably the best person. As there's no risk of, between RAQ and Marvin, there's no risk of that being repeated to anyone else. At the same time, we haven't seen their mom really since the first season, but here we see her popping up. She popped up a few episodes ago where Lou was at the house to get some records, and, she was complaining about RAQ not sending money as she used to, and, Marvin not coming by at all. This season, she actually pops up at his club, where I would question how she knows it. Well, I think he mentioned it to her when he went to the house. But she pops up at the club and is there really to ask for money, once again complaining that, RAQ has been short. It's unclear as to why exactly it is that RAQ is cutting back on the money that she's given to her mom. She's still giving her money, but then again, the mom seems kind of problematic. So it's possible, it sounds like RAQ is still giving her money, but the mom feels like it's not enough. Because here she is again complaining about bills. And it's like, ma'am, I'm sure you're probably retired by now, or pretty close to it. You don't sound like you work. How you got all these bills all of a sudden? What is your situation? Because it sounds like RAQ's been paying your bills for quite some time now. And you sound like you were a bummy parent. So, she's looking out for you. But pretty much it's like, I feel like we're going to see more of the mom, which I'm here for, because I think with her being present, I think eventually we might get more of their backstory. It's like, again, this mention of the dad and whatever it is that happened to him. It sounds like Lou in some part blames the mom for it. Is it that the dad committed suicide or something like that? But what drove him to it? Or was he murdered? What exactly happened? Because it doesn't sound like, he died peacefully in old age. So I'm curious to see, I'm actually looking forward and hoping to see more of the mom. So we can get more of their backstory as far as what exactly it is that happened in their childhood, and specifically what happened to their father. Moving forward, I think we can already see where things are going with the setup between, the tension between RAQ and Ronnie and the other, snap, crackle, and pop dealers. As far as what happens from here. It's going to be interesting. I think things are going to come to a head, and Kanan's probably going to be put in an uncomfortable position. Because I think it's one thing to be upset with your mom, and he has every right to be. I think it's something different for you to be put in the position of either having to pull the trigger or being party to it, knowing that your associates are planning to get your mom up out of there, And it's it feels different than the original Power, just because, we saw Sean and stuff like that, yes, but he wasn't such a major character, whereas here it is that we've grown to know RAQ, and it's him killing Sean was kind of that's a little questionable as a father, but for him to kill RAQ, I don't think I could rock with that. I think at that point, I think the show would be too much for me, and I'd probably chuck the deuce at that point. We'll see how it plays out. It actually puts RAQ in a pretty vulnerable position. Like I said, my prediction is that this is leading to a setup where Marvin will probably end up going to jail, and something's going to happen to Lou. Either he's going to drink himself to death or get into some kind of nonsense as a result of his drinking, or they're going to end up killing him. So, and with that, it's RAQ out there by herself, and she has no allies, no team behind her either. But, we never know. I'm curious to see where things go from here. We have, 3 episodes left to go, and usually about episode 8 is where things really ratchet up, and so far this season has been full of excitement, and I don't think that the last 3 episodes are going to disappoint. So the downside though is that there's just 3 episodes left, and I'm sure we're going to have quite a number of months to wait before the show comes back. Probably not until late summer. So I'm curious to see what happens over the next few episodes. And at the same time, I'm kind of like dreading the end of the season as well. But we'll see, and I'll catch you on tomorrow's episode. Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, go ahead and